about why you have canceled mental health grants for our schools. We have 5 schools in Oregon that got grants to have more mental health counselors, and you have thank you very much. Greetings. Glad to have you before the committee. I wanted to turn to TRIO. I wanted to echo Senator Collins' support, but I know you wanted accountability, and you think it would be a good idea to have each grantee have to have benchmarks that they're seeking to address?
I think that we do need to have better accountability with TRIO, but one of the things that I said
limited time, but benchmarks up front would be useful to have these programs meet?
Yes,
maybe have them do an annual report on meeting those benchmarks?
Accountabilities, yes, because we don't now have the ability to track that.
So actually, those benchmarks are set now, and each grantee has to do an annual report. Have you read those annual reports?
I've not read them all, no.
Okay.
But I do know that they're not following all those different offices.
So,
and I've also said that if Congress...
Madam, just let me finish if I can. And that is that you said there was no accountability. I just pointed out that 2 of the things you'd like to see, which are benchmarks and annual performance reports, are already done. In addition, the Pell Institute published a recent summary of 4 of the studies the Department of Education did on 4 of these 8 TRIO programs. Have you looked at those reports? Because they did a thorough evaluation of these programs.
I have not personally, no.
Well, that bothers me for you to come before us today and say there needs to be accountability, and yet there is accountability, and it just seems like a cover story for saying we don't want to help blue-collar kids make it into college. And I must tell you, most of my colleagues here, they're not blue-collar kids. I am. I know how hard it was to make that leap into college. I know the difficulty of the culture when you grow up in high school and you never talk to anybody about going to college, and you don't understand what that's all about in that world. And these TRIO programs have resulted in 6 million students graduating through those programs. And you want accountability? Well, what did those studies say that have been done by the Department of Education? They said upward bound students twice as likely to earn a bachelor's degree. Talent search students 33% more likely to enroll in college. Veterans upward bound 42% more likely. I'm going to go on to my next question, but let me just say your argument that there's no studies, no accountability, is just actually wrong. And the fact that you're coming here not even having looked at your own department studies of these programs in order to be informed about them is profoundly troubling. Let me turn to the cost of higher education. This is also very important to a blue-collar kid. Folks in my community today, because I still live in a blue-collar community, they say, we're not sure our kids should go to college because they'll end up with a millstone of mountain of debt and maybe no job. And here you are making it more expensive. I wonder if you know how much a student in Germany has to pay in tuition for university.
I don't.
It's 0. What about the broader European economic zone?
Sir, we don't live in Europe.
It is 0. But my point here is those countries are saying we want every child to thrive. We want every child to have opportunity. We don't want them to be saying our kids, maybe we should tell them not to go to college because they'll have this mountain of debt. And that opportunity, that's American values of opportunity for every individual. And here you are raising the cost of college, making it much harder for ordinary kids from blue-collar backgrounds to be able to pursue their dreams. And I find that totally inconsistent with Trump's campaign, where he said he would fight for ordinary families.
No, I have to disagree, sir.
Hello, viewers. Welcome back to another episode of The American Enigma. Today, I just watched a clip that had me shaking my head. Yes, another round of the same old nonsense from our so-called education leadership. Senator Jeff Merkley grilling Secretary McMahon over education programs. Or should I say, government handouts disguised as education. Let's break this down. First off, accountability. Senator Merkley is demanding benchmarks and performance reports like it's the greatest sin that Secretary McMahon hasn't personally read every single one of them. Folks, here's the thing. The federal government already has these benchmarks. They already have the data, but apparently that's not good enough. Merkley wants to act like no one is watching, but McMahon admits they can't even track the outcomes properly. That right there tells you the problem isn't a lack of reports. It's the inefficiency and waste in how these programs are run. Now, Merkley's proud little speech about blue-collar kids and college. Sure, I get it. It's a heartfelt story. But here's the reality. Government programs like Upward Bound and Talent Search have been around for decades, costing taxpayers billions, and yet the results are mediocre at best. Merkley brags about a 33% or 42% increase in college enrollment. But what about quality? What about students actually graduating and getting good jobs without drowning in debt? And that's ignoring the fact that pushing everyone toward college is a one-size-fits-none policy that leaves many young Americans stuck with debt and no skills.
Not raising the cost of college. We are actually, with all of the programs that we want to put in place, we want colleges to reduce their cost.
Well, actually, these loan programs that you're changing are making it much more expensive for kids to go to college, and they're getting.
We've not changed loan programs.
I'm going to turn to mental health because I'm very concerned about mental health. A few years ago, before COVID, when I was in a meeting with student counselors in Eastern Oregon, a very rural area, and they said, you know, we're seeing kids come in our early ages, and they're acting out much more than they ever did before. And I said, well, is this because was there a factory that just shut down here, or a mill that just shut down, or an infusion of wave of meth? And they said, no, those are all, the economy's a factor, drug use is a factor in our community. But no, those aren't new. And one of the counselors said, this is what's new. And they pulled out their cell phone. This is what's new. Kids are coming in with far less understanding and ability of how to sit in a collaborative environment like a classroom and how to communicate with other children and teachers. There is a book that just came out. My staff happened to put it on my desk this morning, so I'm going to ask for Chapter 5 to be put into the record, The Anxious Generation. And I was paging through it, and under Chapter 5, it notes that there are 4 factors in which these cell phones are affecting our children profoundly: social deprivation, sleep deprivation, attention fragmentation, and screen addiction. I'd really encourage you to take a look at this. I've been urging the department to seriously look at the issue of how childhood is changing. And childhood is changing because of technology in ways that are really compromising the ability of our education enterprise to work well. But this brings to my point about why you have canceled mental health grants for our schools. We have 5 schools in Oregon that got grants to have more mental health counselors, and you have canceled them. Why have you canceled mental health grants in the middle of a enormously challenging time for our students?
We've not canceled mental health grants. We've said we're not continuing them after this year because we're going to allow those programs to be rebid and to take a different look at them, but they have not been canceled. And I couldn't agree with you more about cell phones. There's governors of several states who have said bell to bell there are not going to be cell phones in the classroom, and they are seeing upticks in their literacy and also in the social interaction. So therefore, states have the abilities at very different levels to go ahead and make decisions and to put their policies in place that can be effective.
Then the 5 grants that you have canceled that you are unaware of in Oregon, you will restore those 5 grants?
We've not canceled. We're not continuing those grants.
So if you discover that you have actually canceled grants that were already awarded, you will undo those cancellations?
I would like to get back to you on that. I do not believe we've canceled any grants. We're not continuing, but we will rebid them.
Oh, you'll rebid them, meaning you're canceling them, but you'll rebid them.
We are not continuing them. We haven't canceled them.
Okay, well,
we are continuing.
Well, I've got 5 schools that have received letters from you or your department saying their grants, their mental health grants have been canceled. They worked very hard to apply for those
canceled
grants.
Canceled or not continued?
That they've been canceled, the grants that they have received for their program.
And I will look into that and get back to you.
Obviously, when you get a grant, it's for work you're doing from here forward. So if not continuing means as of today we're not funding it, then you canceled the grant.
No, you can rebid the grant, you can recompete the grant, and you can have different
Is that what you're doing?
You
said the grants you got, we're ending them and we're taking them back, but we're going to
I said we are not continuing them after this year. We will have a rebidding process to relook at those grants.
Well, I strongly encourage you to understand how the changes you're making are hurting ordinary kids across this country who may have aspirations, and those aspirations may not all require going to college, but many of those aspirations can be well served by higher education, and you shouldn't be putting obstacles in their path.
Thank you. Senator Merkley, if you look, what we're doing has not worked.
All right.
So we're continuing to throw money at things that are not being successful. So we are trying to look appropriately at all of our grants and how the Department of Education is operating.
Madam Chair, I'll just say those programs have been successful. If you'd taken the very effort to read the evaluations of the TRIO programs, you wouldn't be here making that argument today.
All right. Let's wrap up, Senator.
Now, speaking of debt, Merkley gets on his high horse comparing the U.S. to Germany and Europe, claiming they have free tuition. Yeah. Well, guess what? They have massive tax burdens to pay for that free tuition. And they have rigid labor markets, fewer freedoms, and less opportunity. The U.S. isn't Europe, and thank God for that. But here's the kicker. Instead of empowering families and schools to innovate and compete, the federal government keeps pushing expensive, bureaucratic programs that trap students in a system that raises costs instead of lowering them. Now, on mental health, I'll give Merkley a bit of credit for raising concerns about kids glued to their phones and struggling socially. But then, he flips out about canceling grants for mental health counselors. McMahon says they're not canceled, just not continuing as is, because the department wants to rethink and rebid these grants. That's smart. Throwing money at a problem without results isn't patriotism. It's waste. But Merkley, like many on the left, wants to double down on spending without real reform. Look, viewers, here's what this all boils down to. We want accountability. We want effective education, not handouts and bureaucratic boondoggles that do more harm than good. We want programs that work, that empower parents, respect local control, and give kids the skills to thrive in the real world. Not endless federal interference that raises costs and limits choices. Merkley's anger isn't about helping blue-collar kids. It's about preserving the status quo, which means more government control, more spending, and less freedom. Meanwhile, hardworking American families get stuck footing the bill. So what's the solution? Cut the fat. Demand transparency. Let schools innovate. Promote vocational training and apprenticeships. Support parents' rights to decide what's best for their kids. Not Washington bureaucrats. If we keep throwing money at broken programs without reform, we're just feeding the beast. It's time for real accountability, not political grandstanding. Thanks for tuning in, viewers. If you agree that education reform means less federal control and more opportunity for our kids, hit that like button, share this video, comment and subscribe for more uncensored news analysis. Until next time, keep standing strong for liberty and the American way.